Welcome back, College Baseball Central fans. It is the episode we've been waiting for. I know a lot of you fans are waiting for this one. This is the big one, okay? This is the SEC preview show. Today I'm joined by Noah Darling. How we doing, Noah?
Pretty good, Mark. It's great to finally dive into the SEC. I know SEC fans will probably tell you that we're just lucky to be alive at the same time as the SEC thriving, but it is a good day to be alive, I'll tell you that, Mark.
It is a good day to be alive. I think everybody's off for the holiday now until at least Tuesday, right, fellas? AJ, how we doing today?
Doing well. I'm ready to get in some contentious conversation about where we have some of these guys ranked.
As an SEC fan, I think you mean pretentious.
No.
Listen, the SEC, it's a whole different beast, right? When we dive into it, and I'm still riding high from the ACC preview last week, and I didn't love what I saw that much out of the SEC preview this week. But I'm excited for the show to get into this and really discuss if we believe that the ACC might actually be better than the SEC as a whole this year. As we always do on our preview shows, we ranked all these guys in the preseason here without conference affiliation, no East, no West. We're just doing straight 14 through 1. We're going to break this down for you, why we have all these teams in their places, tell you how each team can do better, and put the best players available for each of these teams and talk about it. Fellas, let's get into it. We got number 14, Ole Miss. Now, this is not necessarily a surprise, but it is crazy to see Ole Miss being just a couple years removed from a national championship, being the picked to not even make it to Hoover. They got some good incoming freshmen. So they got freshman right-handed pitcher Taylor Rabe, 6'5", big kid. They brought in Andrew Fisher, third base Duke transfer, really talented dude, and Trayson Hughes, an outfielder from Mercer, who might have been the best D1 prospect coming out of a non-power conference. I really like what Trayson Hughes does. I'm concerned that this Ole Miss team does not have a lot outside of these transfer players. They did not have a lot of returning talent. AJ, when you look at this Ole Miss team, what do you see and why we have them at 14?
I mean, I personally did not have them at 14 because I have faith in some of the guys coming back who were either battling injury last year or freshmen getting exposed to the SEC for the first time. I think JT Quinn and Xavier Rivas are going to be two quality rotation pieces, pitch much better than they did last year. Don't look at their ERAs. It doesn't show what kind of guy they were, what kind of guy they had the potential to be.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the real question mark for me is going to be the offensive identity. You have a couple guys coming back, like Ethan Groff and Ethan Leger, who both could have gone pro, could have moved on and decided to come back and help be the identity. But outside of those guys, it's not a lot of known quantities. You lose Jake Gonzalez, you lose Kemp Alderman, and you bring in a couple of very good transfers. But how do we see that manifest in the locker room? How do we see that manifest on the field? Getting used to ACC ball is always a challenge. So they have question marks for me. Again, I don't think they're going to finish last. It's just kind of, they're not going to be in the running for hosting, in my opinion.
Nope. Nobody in this room here had them picked last, by the way. So all of us did not have Ole Miss picked dead last in the conference, but they did get the overall vote as the dead last team in the conference. I'm with you, AJ. I think that they have a little bit, and they might be able to build off that. Their pitching was a big question mark last year, and they just couldn't get outs in SEC play. And then another freshman I want to talk about that they did bring in, Campbell Smithwick, who might get the start at catcher. He's a stud. He's a stud. I just don't know if that and the transfer players of Fisher and Hughes can be enough to add on to what they had with Graff. I just don't know if they have enough. But we have them here at 14. Ole Miss at 14 is kind of sad to see, but they are there. Number 13, Missouri. This one is kind of surprising because they feel like they're right on the bubble of possibly making the tournament, and we have them at 13. Noah, talk a little bit about this Mizzou ball club.
I think it's a team that's going to miss Luke Mann a lot from last year. He was somebody who, even I know AJ against South Carolina, all of a sudden he was scoring every at-bat, it seemed like. It's a rebuilding year, but that's why you have a new head coach. You have Carrick Jackson coming in from Memphis. I know, Mark, you were talking before he started, and I feel the same way that I think long-term he's going to be a great addition for Missouri. He's going to help turn them around. We believe in what Carrick Jackson can do, but I think it's going to be a slow, grind-it-out couple of years, really get your footing, build a culture there that Missouri hasn't really seen. We've seen them win some big games. started off really well last year. I know we had them ranked for a brief time, and then they did some Missouri things along the way. They just don't have what it takes to compete at the top of the SEC right now. But I think they can kind of merge their way into that almost conversation area. They do have transfer Danny Corona coming from Wake Forest, who people almost forget about how kind of good he was in the ACC. So it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do in the SEC with Missouri. But for now, it's going to be one of those years where we look at Missouri as somebody say, hey, look at them, they're competing.
Yeah, and for me, when I look at this ball club, it comes down to a lot of Logan Lunsford, right? Can he actually be a Friday night starter in the SEC? Like, he was really good in midweek games last year. He showed that he has this stuff to be a guy. Can he be a Friday night starter? It's a big leap to go from that midweek starter and jumping into a Friday night SEC starter. They do have a little bit other Trevor Austin, another guy returning. They don't have much else in the mix there. It's going to be really interesting to see who they throw out there with a combination of transfer and freshmen out there. So interesting to see what Mizzou does, but I agree. Coach Jackson is a great fit. I think that he will get this team turned around. I just don't know if it's this year for Mizzou at 13 here. Moving on to number 12, much maligned, Mississippi State, and I don't know if there's a hotter seat in the country. AJ, let's talk about Mississippi State and how we feel about this. 2 years removed from a national championship, back-to-back 9 and 21 seasons, and the SEC is not going to cut it. Can they right the ship this year?
I mean, as always, they have the talent to right the ship, absolutely. It's just a matter of, do your guys stay healthy? Do your guys perform? And really who you have to build around. I think we look at the team and we see two names that jump off the page, and that's Hunter Hine and Dakota Jordan. Both of those guys could be the cornerstone of one of the best lineups in the SEC if everyone else stays healthy around them and produces. Last year, they were on an island. We saw them just kind of try to lead a team and weren't able to carry the team with injuries, with different questions about the pitching staff being able to throw strikes. I mean, their losing stretch in SEC play was incredible. For the talent they had on the team to not be able to win was unreal, unrepeatable. I don't think we're seeing that. I don't think we see that again. I think we see a healthier team that throws more strikes, which was a huge problem for them.
Huge problem.
I'm curious to see what we see around the lineup and identity for Mississippi State. Are they just dropping bombs and trying to outslug you? Do they actually have pitching staff to, battle your number one with the number one of their own? That's where I have question marks this year. Yeah,
for me, the ambidextrous Girangelo, can he come out and be an actual stud and be an ace? I don't know. I know he has the ability, he has the pitches. I just don't know if he can be an ace in the ACC or in the SEC here. Another guy I want to keep an eye on, left-hand pitcher Bradley Lofton. He's got to be much, much better for them to be good this year, right? Like, he's got to be a very good starting pitcher for them to be successful. But Hunter Hines and Dakota Jordan, Hunter Hines has the ability to be the SEC Player of the Year. He has every ability to do that, and I have full faith in him. And Dakota Jordan is a great player, but I just don't know if there's enough going to be built around these guys to get them to hoover and do any damage here in the SEC. It's a tough slate there for Mississippi State. Moving forward here at number 12, we had that Mississippi State Ball Club. Number 11, Alabama. Now turmoil. That's what this team is. This is turmoil. They lost a ton of players. They lost their staff. They have a lot of question marks. This is just a really, really tough one. Noah, tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on this number 11 Alabama.
Alabama's in a strange situation because heading into the end of last year, outside of what else they had going on, this was a team where you said, okay, if they can get the right head coach, which I think they did, and keep the pieces, which they didn't, they would be in a really, really good position, not just now, but to build on what Rob Vaughn is going to be able to do down there, which just like Carrick Jackson in Missouri, I hope we're all in agreement that Rob Vaughn is a fantastic head coach because he's one of the best in the country, in my opinion. He was never able to get Maryland to Omaha, but he's somebody who knows how to build a program. He's coached all over. He's going to be successful at Alabama. I would bet a lot of money on that, no pun intended. But Alabama has lost a lot of pieces, and it's going to be tough. Some of them are in the conference. You look at Colby Shelton down at Florida now. He was going to be a big piece for them. I look at somebody like Ian Petritz, somebody who's very experienced at Maryland, to come in and be a leader in that Alabama clubhouse. But it's going to be a tough turnaround right now, which is strange because they hosted a regional. It's going to be so weird. to watch this Alabama team who has all the right pieces and then watch them fall apart and immediately rebuild. But Rob Vaughn is somebody who, if you're an Alabama fan, you should be very excited about having.
I agree. I think moving forward, Alabama has a bright future as long as they can keep him there and make sure that they keep bringing in the right kind of guys that fit his program. I know that they got big left-handed pitcher Zane Adams, who was the highest recruited player in Alabama history, that's coming in right there. That's a big get for them. He might end up having to work his way into the weekend starting rotation. And then another Big Ten transfer I'd like to talk about is Evan Slight from Rutgers. He had a really successful season at Rutgers last year. Coming over to Alabama, he's going to get an ability to start right now in left or right field. I don't know which one. Petrich and him are going to play the corner outfield. I don't know which one's going to play which direction, but those two transfers in for the Big Ten are going to get the ability to play right now for Alabama. The future is bright, but the future is not right now for Alabama here at number 11. Moving to number 10, Kentucky. AJ, we've had some heated discussions on this Kentucky team, so I'm going to go ahead and let you start. Kentucky at 10. We like this team. We love them. Some hate them. Let us know your thoughts here.
If y'all have seen my preview for Omaha, I have Kentucky making Omaha. So some folks in our CBC who have Kentucky ranked this low, I'm here to teach them a little bit about why Kentucky is going to be super successful this year. First of all, they're coming back as the oldest team in the SEC. They're bringing back a ton of experience. The positions where they don't have their starters returning, they're bringing in experienced transfers to fill those roles. They were the best defensive team in the country last year, tied with, I believe it was Oral Roberts. They're going to bring back that same level of defense this year. The guys they're bringing in to replace guys who have moved on are Mitchell Daly, who's had all that experience at Texas. And then Ryan Nicholson, he'll slide over to first base for them, transfer from Cincinnati. But the pitching staff's going to be very similar to what they saw last year. They're bringing in more transfers. Trey Poozer from College of Charleston and Dominic Neiman, who is an All-American at Central Connecticut State, bringing in those guys who can just really pitch. They'll get ground balls. That's what they want. The ballpark, they're not going to hit a ton of home runs, but that's not their game. They're bringing in guys who can conform to the kind of game they want to play. Very good defense, keep the ball in the yard, and offense is going to just do more of the same. I think the sky is the limit for this team. I really do. I think they're going to grind out a lot of wins in the SEC, and I think 10th is disrespectful to them.
I'm with you. You and I both had them in the top 6 in our polls, and it was surprising to see them at 10 with a lot of hate for this program. They are starting 3 infielders that played shortstop at D1 baseball. They are starting a shortstop at second base, at shortstop, and third base this year. And then you're bringing in Ryan Nicholson, who, if they had a gold glove, he would have won it last year for Cincinnati. That guy is legitimate first baseman, and he hits the ball out of the ballpark. He gives them a little bit of that pop that they didn't necessarily have enough of last year to mix in with the small ball and the pitching. Also returning Travis Smith and Mason Moore, those right-handed pitchers that you mentioned. A lot of experience for this team. I think that this team's got their head on straight. Playing in a big ballpark is going to be tough for teams to go in there and beat them with the home run ball, with the pitching that they have. This team's built on pitching and defense, which is a total difference and throws people off in the SEC. But I love this Kentucky team. The more research I do on this team, the deeper dive I get in. It's just like Wildcat heaven has just happened around us here, AJ. I know there's a lot of hate for it. I don't have them going to Omaha like you do, but I do think that this team could be successful and definitely finish in the top half of this conference. Noah, did you have anything to add on Kentucky? I know you have a little bit of feelings there. If you want to throw them in at the moment, you can dive in.
I had a lot of animosity towards Kentucky and their RPI ranking last season, but I'll admit that AJ did just jog my memory of Mitchell Daly, who has been one of my favorite players in the country for a couple years now. So I might be a cat now.
I love it. Join the dark side with us. And we have Kentucky at number 10, which, again, I think it's a little low on our ranking system, but number 10, Kentucky, look for them to be a little bit better than that. Moving on to number 9, Auburn. Now, we know what they have done in the past, 5 of 16 times in the regionals. Can this Auburn team actually pick up where they left off and be great, or is this team still recovering from all the injuries they had in 2023 and being kind of a down year? Noah, tell us a little bit of your thoughts on this Auburn ball club.
I've spent a lot of time in Auburn jail because of my disrespect for them over the years. But every year it feels like they get overlooked just a little bit and then they surprise people. And then all of a sudden Auburn is hosting a regional just like they did this year. Of course, the regional didn't go the way they wanted it to, but they were there. They were hosting. Butch Thompson is probably the most underrated coach in America if we really dive into how he's viewed. This is a guy who's been to Omaha as much as anybody has, and it's led by Bobby Pierce. This year he's back. Ike Irish was one of the best freshmen in the country last season, almost overlooked because of how deep that SEC freshman class was. And Chris Stanfield's going to be a nice returning piece for him. He was batting fifth for him for majority of the season. He's going to be a good returning piece for him as they do recover from a loss like Bryson Ware, who was there forever. And then Will Cannon is going to be big time on the mound for them. That would be my only question for Auburn is who's going to get the outs. But as always, I'm not going to doubt Butch Thompson.
So I saw a guy that I believe could be a legitimate ace in the SEC if he's healthy. Joseph Gonzalez was hurt last year. He only had the one start. He came out, had his shoulder cleaned out. He's not really throwing in the fall ball yet. He had a little bit of issues here. He's trying to get healthy. I saw him throw in the Corvallis Super Regional, and this guy is legit, right? He's a full SEC Friday night guy. If he can be healthy by SEC play, I don't know if he's going to be healthy in the preseason games here in February. If Joseph Gonzalez can be healthy, he can lead this Auburn team, and I believe he can be great. First baseman Cooper McMurray also, I wanted to throw him out there and mention that he can be a guy who could hit 20 home runs in this SEC, and especially in that ballpark down there in Auburn. Butch Thompson, great coach. That's why we have them at number 9, this Auburn Ball Club, number 9 in the SEC. Moving on to number 8, we have Georgia. Now, there's a lot to like about this Georgia Ball Club, but there's also a lot of pieces they got to fill in, and I don't know if 8 was really the ranking. I had them much lower than 8 this year, as much as I love the two Charlies. But why don't you start us off, AJ, and tell us about this Georgia Ball Club?
I mean, really with Wes Johnson coming in as the head coach, we are looking at the pitching staff to make a giant leap forward. But with the guys, they're bringing in a bunch of transfers, hoping guys bounce back from injury. It's one of those teams that either could, skyrocket to the top if everything clicks, or completely fall apart if you have, what we saw at Mississippi State last year, 1 or 2 guys in the offense creating the identity and then nothing else around them. Yeah. So I think 8's actually probably a fair place to have them to start the year, because there's so much helium or lead that can take them either direction. Obviously, Charlie Condon's going to lead the team. He is an elite talent. I think he's going to build upon his year last year. He had a home run in every SEC series. He hit 339 in the SEC. It was unreal, and I think he can do that again. But transfers, to me, are going to be the identity of this team. They brought in so much talent. Colby Branch, Dylan Carter, Logan Jordan, guys who they're going to need to lean on to fill in that lineup around them. Yeah. Pitching staff, they have some guys who are returning from within the roster who have the talent, just haven't stayed healthy. Apparently this fall, all the pitchers be given every number, every data point they want, they could possibly need. And that is helping them just be exposed to more information. We'll see if that translates to in-game success. I don't think having information hurts. Sometimes you can lose the forest and the trees, though. So we'll see. I have faith in this Georgia team. I think it's going to be one of the stories of the SEC. But it's definitely, they're on a tightrope.
It is. It's a tough. It's going to be tough to see if these transfers can step up and surround Charlie Condon, right? Got to support him if they can get some offense going. Left-handed pitcher Charlie Goldstein, best returner that they have coming back, could be the Friday night starter. If he is elite and he can be the guy with Wes Johnson coaching this team, they could go. This Georgia team could be in the top half there of the SEC, or they could just as easily fall down and be 13-14, even with all that talent, just because this SEC is very deep this year as far as those teams 6 through 14, in my opinion. But I just believe that it's going to fall a lot on this pitching staff to be great, and that's going to be a strong point for Wes Johnson and this Georgia ball club. Georgia at number 8. Number 7, Texas A&M. We all know that they got the prized possession of the transfer portal. You know what, Noah, why don't you start us off here? Texas A&M, I believe I know where you're going to start with this, but go ahead. You are muted.
I am muted, but Braden Montgomery's bat will not be in College Station this year. Really exciting time for A&M. There was a bit of a battle to get him, and they were able to secure him. But I think that there's a lot more to be excited about than just Braden Montgomery. Laviolette's back. You get Chris Cortez on the mound, Ryan Prager, Ryan Targak. All these guys have substantial experience at the college level, and they're able to kind of come in and guide this A&M team. The pitching staff is going to be a little bit of who's got the depth and who doesn't in terms of able to go out and produce multiple innings of work. There's a new pitching staff in town. We're going to see how they handle things. I think he's a little bit more of an analytical guy. But then you're going to look at transfers like Ted Burton joining as well, Ali Camarello, Tanner Jones. This is a team that they're going to have some peppered in talent that we kind of didn't see last year. We saw that kind of luck wear out where they got to Omaha with maybe a team who wasn't on par with where A&M really should be. They kind of got struck gold in the transfer portal per se. But now you're seeing Jim Schloss, kind of bring in his guys, and we're going to be able to see what that looks like.
Third straight season for Texas A&M bringing in a starting shortstop. But I love what Ali Camarillo brings in. This guy is an experienced shortstop, Cal State Northridge. Fantastic freshman season. Really deserves to be in the SEC here, and being at Texas A&M is a huge step for them. Braden Montgomery is great. I just want to see what else they have in that pitching staff. I do love that they brought in a new pitching coach, and they are going to be going. I really want to see this Texas A&M. They didn't have a weekend rotation starting win in the SEC until week 8 or something. It was a weird go at it last year. They got to be a lot better if they want to be competing in the SEC. But I believe that they have all the pieces. This A&M ball club is moving forward. Schlossnagle doing a great job. I'm very excited to see what happens here with this ball club. So we had A&M at number 7. Moving on to number 6, a team that I have going to Omaha, South Carolina. The Gamecocks are back. I believe that they're going to be building off their success from last year. What do you think on this team? AJ, I'm going to let you start, and then I'm going to kick it to you, Noah, after AJ.
I think on the offensive side of the ball, outside of Kentucky, we know exactly what we're going to get from this team more than about any other team in the SEC. You have so many guys returning, the identities there. With Ethan Petrie, Cole Messina leading the offense, it's going to be good batting average, but a ton of power, a ton of danger up and down the lineup. Even the transfers they bring in fit right into the identity in the outfield. Going to be good defense out there, but again, swinging the stick up and down the lineup. There's more depth than there was last year across certain positions, where we saw last year with injuries, South Carolina's 7, 8, 9 were no offensive threat. This year, unless they really get decimated by injuries, that's not going to be the case just with the talent they have offensively. The question is going to be, how does the pitching staff look? You lose 4 or 5 guys to the draft or they graduate. And, that's Will Sanders, that's Noah Hall, that's James Hicks, that's Jack Mahoney. Those are legitimately your 4 starters going into the year of your weekend and then your midweek. So, Eli Jones, he got SEC run last year. Is he going to be a Friday night guy? Matthew Becker, he was kind of their only lefty who threw last year. So they were hesitant about how to use him as a starter out of the bullpen because you only got one lefty. And so he's good. He's started. He's had success in the SEC. Roman Kimball, kind of the X factor, coming back from injury. He has Friday night stuff. Does he stay healthy? Does he lock back in? And then the bullpen behind him, they have the depth. They have the talent. It's just a matter of, do guys throw strikes? Obviously, that's the most important thing. We've seen a ton of SEC staffs have talent, but just get decimated by walking guys. Do these guys settle in? Do the freshmen who get a chance out of the bullpen settle in and carve out roles for themselves? Or is it a situation where, none of the guys really live up to the billing? I think the pitching staff is a question this year, whereas last year it was entirely an offensive question.
Absolutely, yeah. And, like you talked about, there's a lot of things to like on the offensive side. Gavin Cassis, Talmadge LaCroix, some guys that are really going to add a lot of pop to this lineup and possibly some better averages. Injury bug got them last year, Noah. Can this team stay healthy? What's the limit for this South Carolina team?
Well, you certainly hope they can stay healthy. As AJ kind of alluded to, it's a little bit of an interesting change. Last year we were saying, all right, we know this team can pitch, but can they score runs? And now it's, okay, we know they can score a million runs, but can they get the outs? Kind of an interesting turn there. But he didn't mention Parker Noland adding to that offense. We saw him, and I think Mississippi State fans still kind of have him burned into his memory after he had, 11 RBIs in one game. And I think he did it the next day. Really exciting time for Gamecock fans. I also have them in Omaha. Will Tippett as well is going to be a big piece for him. I know that he kind of took over that shortstop role. I'm actually astonished you didn't mention that, AJ.
Yeah, I mean, Will Tippett, trial by fire, started out the year kind of getting overwhelmed just with the pitch velo and stuff he was facing. By the end of the year, he's hitting clutch home runs against Auburn to keep South Carolina's hosting hopes alive. One of the guys who you could tell South Carolina was building towards the future last year with getting him all those at-bats. And the future is now for Will Tippett. He has the chance to take that starting shortstop role and run with it.
That's kind of the thing with South Carolina, is that everybody around you is really good.
Yeah. It's a great lineup up and down. Everybody's really good.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one on Friday, Saturday, Sundays to see how do we get them out? How do we get 27 outs every day against this ball club? That's going to be the tough one here for all these SEC teams moving into there. Number 6, South Carolina. Moving on to our number 5 team, Vanderbilt. They kind of feel a lot like every Vanderbilt team ever, built on pitching and just enough offense here. AJ, I'm going to let you talk on this Vanderbilt team. I know that there's a lot of pitching and a lot of things to like. One thing I want to mention before I send it over to you, Sawyer Hawks coming from Air Force. No, he's not Paul Skeens, but he is a good transfer in at right-handed pitcher. But I'm going to go ahead and let you start off with this Vanderbilt team.
I mean, it seems like every year I look at Vanderbilt and I'm like, okay, this has to be the year where they're losing a ton of guys, and they do. Like Enrique Bradfield Jr. is no longer there, and Parker Noland transfers out, and it's like, okay, where are the guys who they leaned on? They're gone. And then you look at some of the guys they have returning, and it's like, okay, there's something there. They have the talent, they have the freshman who throws 99, and they have the returners who can hold them in games. And then you look up in the middle of March and you're like, okay, this is a very good team. It's like every year they're just going to find talent. There's just so much reliance on youth this year with the freshmen that I think they're going to do very well getting about 2 postseason time. My question is, during the latter half of SEC play and then into the postseason, do the freshmen's bodies hold up? It's so hard for guys coming into the SEC for the first year maintaining that level of fitness. We see it time and time again. Freshmen lose stuff, freshmen lose velo, they lose power, they get hurt. They're going to rely a lot on freshmen. Deservedly so with the talent that they're bringing in the freshman class. I just don't know if they hold up. They're going to be dangerous. The talent's going to be there to jump up and grab you. But that's my question mark with Vanderbilt.
Yeah, the weekend rotation is pretty well set, I think, with Holton and Futrell and Hawks now. So they're pretty well set up on what they're going to do. But they're going to have to rely on 5 freshman arms out of the bullpen trying to get some outs there in the SEC. And like you said, 30 games is a lot, and that's just the SEC play. That doesn't even match up with all the rest of inside. You're talking about 60 games before you even get to postseason play. It's a lot on these bodies, especially when these guys mostly, in high school, they're playing 26 to 32 games in a high school season. It's a lot of a different ability there. And then you come more like your first step to pro ball here when you jump into this college ranking, especially at the SEC level. Returning hitters, RJ Austin and Jonathan Bastine, give them a lot of opportunities to win ball games. I think that this is going to be a pitching and defense team, a lot like what we're talking about with Kentucky. But they do have enough offense to make enough noise there to be ranked number 5 in our poll here. Number 5, Vanderbilt. Moving on to number 4, we have Arkansas. This Arkansas team feels like it's pretty well loaded up. Feels like they're back. Feels like they really want to return after that loss to TCU last year. Noah, what are your thoughts and feelings on this Arkansas ball club?
Arkansas has a chance to have the best rotation in the country this season with Hagan Smith, Brady Tigert, and Mason Molina going 1, 2, 3. My question is going to be offensively, which is kind of interesting for Arkansas. We think the offense is always going to be fine, and of course, pitching has always been fine too. It's a great program, but usually you don't wonder about the offense like you do with this Arkansas team. Kendall Diggs is back, And then after that, you kind of wonder, you can see the holes in the lineup. And I have full faith in Dave Van Horn, and I know that I can't say too much negativity about Arkansas, or else I will be a victim of some kind of crime. But it's going to be a little bit of a kind of rough and tumble year, like we've seen the last couple with Arkansas, where they have that opportunity to be susceptible to certain teams depending on how they play. But that pitching is going to be dynamite, and that's going to put them in position to host automatically. You combine that with playing at Baum-Walker Stadium, and Arkansas is going to be just fine. Arkansas's worst year is a lot of teams' best year.
This is true. I believe that this team is going to be really, really good. I'm going to let AJ dive in on this Arkansas team because I think that they are stacked. The offense is the question for me, but I believe they got some answers.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of like when a position or a side of the ball is a question, I try to key in on one guy who I think could help shape the identity. And transfer for them, Ty Wilmsmeyer, coming in from Missouri, just a guy who's just a ball player. Nothing jumps off the page at you. He doesn't have absurd exit velocities. He doesn't hit for a ton of power, but he just grinds. He hits for a good average. He plays a good defensive center field, and he's just an all-around good, gritty ball player. And I think if Arkansas can kind of adapt that identity this year of, hey, this experienced guy takes his walks, gets his hits, not trying to do too much at the plate, and just gives the pitching staff a chance to lead them to wins, then they're going to have a ton of success in what I think might be a little bit of a down SEC West this year overall, talent-wise.
Yeah, I think that the gates are wide open for Arkansas here, especially with that pitching staff. I'm going to tag in one other transfer player, Wahiwa Eloy from Sacramento State, the shortstop. He's going to get the start at shortstop for this Arkansas ball club. Brings a lot of experience, a lot of talent. Guy who's a gap hitter out my way from here, Sacramento State. He's got a lot of talent. I think that he adds to that offense also as far as a transfer player in there. And don't forget about Peyton Stovall. That guy could be great this year. He's been a little bit on the average side for them, but he has these spurts of greatness, and I want to see a little bit more of that. If I'm an Arkansas fan, though, I got to be pretty excited about just my weekend rotation going in with Smith, Taggart, and Molina. I think that they are really the best three in the SEC as far as a tandem there. That's even better than what we just saw from the Vanderbilt team there at 5. Arkansas, number 4. Very excited about this team moving forward. Number 3, Tennessee. Now, there is a lot to like about this team. They brought in a ton of talent. They lost a little bit. AJ, tell us what your thoughts are on this Tennessee ball club here at 3. I know you had them higher.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are I had Tennessee preseason number 1 in the SEC. I have them winning the SEC. They just return talent on both sides of the ball, experienced talent. The transfers they bring in guys like Billy Amick, who are All-American caliber transfers. Cameron Peebles also go in there just to fill a position of need for them, which is huge. It's the roster is unreal, built for that ballpark. They're built to just drop the back shoulder and lift. And then the pitching staff that they have, Drew Beam, he's probably going to get the chance to be their Friday night guy, and he's thrown like it over the past couple of years. He just hasn't had to be. He is, for my money, probably the best returning starting pitcher in the SEC. And he can pitch in that ballpark. He can have success there. And Xander Zekrist, he's coming back. He will have success on the mound for them. It's a complete team. Of course, injuries can undo anything. But looking at it on paper right now, I'm a huge believer in Tennessee this year.
My big question mark still is the weekend rotation for this team. I'm concerned that they don't have enough experience there. Beam's great. I have no issue there. I'm just wondering, if Nate Snead, the transfer from Wichita State, if he's going to be the guy that they throw in on Sundays. Not a lot of SEC experience. It's a lot different being successful at Wichita State versus coming to the SEC. Noah, what do you think on this Tennessee ball club? I know that we love Coach Vitello. What else do you like about this team?
Well, first we got to talk about Tony. No, I'm just kidding. We love Tony Vitello. The culture there is kind of changing. We saw last year, at least we kind of heard some rumors that maybe things weren't as great as they appeared in the locker room, and we're still talking about a team that played in Omaha. Drew Beam is, of course, fantastic. I know AJ talked about him. Blake Burke is back. That Ken Griffey swing that people get into arguments about on Twitter. Christian Moore's back, Zane Denton's back. This is a team that, like AJ said, is built for that ballpark, and they bring back that experience offensively. And Peebles and Amick coming in, great ACC transfers. Those were big wins in the portal for that we almost kind of forgot about because they were so quick. Tony Vitello steps into living rooms and he gets players on his team. And this is a team that, like AJ said, I was at one point really high on this Tennessee team, but I think because they struck gold in the portal so early, you almost overlook this team now, which I think is right where Tony wants to be, because I don't know if either of you have heard this comment, but in a press conference in Omaha, Tony said, hey, don't rank us number one next year, okay, please? So we're not. You're welcome, Tony.
They're not number one in our poll. They are the number 3 team. You know, we have a lot to love about this Tennessee ball club, but we have them here at 3 because there's 2 other teams that are also very good in the SEC. Number 2, Florida. No, I'm going to let you start with this Florida team. I know that they brought in a lot. They lost a lot, though, from that team that was in the national championship last year. Tell us a little bit about this Florida ball club.
This is a Kevin O'Sullivan team. They're deep. They don't have a ton of experience, but that experience is Omaha experience, which goes a long way compared to some other freshmen in the country. We're talking about Jack Caglione is back doing things 2 ways, of course, which I'm sure we'll hear about. And Jeff Passan is going to be really excited to learn more about him this year. Cade Kurland is somebody that I'm really excited to watch him take that step as a sophomore. True freshman last year, left high school early, and he was really good, especially as time went on. His last at-bat of the year last year was a homer, so he's on a home run streak right now. Really exciting to watch him continue that in his first at-bat. Luke Heyman back as well. Brandon Neely is back, who feels like he's been at Florida forever. Cade Fisher, Ty Evans, Tyler Shelnut are all key pieces of that lineup that are going to, again, not kind of like Wilmsmeyer, not guys that explode in front of your eyes, but guys that are just going to do things the right way. Get on base, get them over, get them in. Robert Satin is going to be a big addition for this Florida pitching staff. He's going to be a freshman coming in there, somebody to keep an eye on. But then you look at Colby Shelton, come over from Alabama, one of those Alabama transfers. Kind of unfair that he gets to go to Florida. I'm sure that'll be a little bit personal for some people. But this Florida lineup is really deep. And the more you dive into it, you kind of have to almost, just like Wake Forest, say, this team, maybe by your hotel.
I mean, you know, I look at this as, you know, Caglione and Shelton, outside of those 2 guys, it feels like a lot of 270 hitters that are going to hit gap to gap and not give you more than double-digit home runs. But I don't know. When I look at this team, it's just tough for me to break it down. AJ, what are your thoughts on this Florida team? I know that you had them highly ranked as well.
Yeah, I mean, this Florida roster, there's so much talent. It feels like they're almost overflowing with talent that even, like you said, some of the hitters who have hit 270 with not that many home runs. Before last year, that was Josh Rivera too. And then he goes off and has an All-American caliber, you know, pushing for Golden Spikes conversation type season. And then before the year, we were kind of sitting here going, we need Florida to have somebody else step up besides some of the known quantities. And they did. It's the same thing this year. You have Jack Caglione and you have Colby Shelton, 2 guys who have really proved themselves, and then guys who need to take that next step. They have a ton of guys who have that ability, and that's why I think Noah and I are betting on them to take that next step, is because you're not counting on one guy to take a step. You're counting on one out of a handful of guys to take that leap. And it seems like it happens for them almost every year. Again, if you want to find a fault, it's the lack of experience across the board. But like Noah said, the experience they do have is Omaha experience.
Yeah, another transfer they brought in, Brody Dene, also another guy who had experience from Vautech. Good outfielder. I don't know how much time he's going to get in the outfield or whether he's DHing or what they're going to use him as, but does give them a little bit more experience. But, yeah, like you said, Rivera decided he was going to just tear the cover off the ball last year and switch his whole swing. Sullivan can do it, right? If there's anybody out there that's going to get this team to be great, he can get this team back to Omaha. It's absolutely Kevin O'Sullivan. Number 2, Florida. So that leaves us with the number 1 team. Got to leave them at number 1, at least in our poll, when they win a national championship last year. LSU, number 1. AJ, I'm going to let you start with this team. I know that I am down a little bit on them. How are you feeling on this LSU ball club?
I also did not have them at number 1. I think that, you know, yes, they coming off a national championship. You never can knock a national championship. They earned it. They beat probably the other 2 best teams in the country on the way to their national championship run. but I'm just looking at their roster currently, trying to remove all um, bias from previous seasons. I don't look at the roster and see a number one roster. I see incredible high end talent, but I don't see it across the board necessary to be, the SEC preseason number one team. I just don't. Yes, you have Tommy White leading your offense, and that's going to be huge. You have talented freshmen coming back who got valuable experience, Jared Jones and Paxton Kling. And beyond that, there's not a lot of guys on the offense who I look at and go, "Ooh, that's a dangerous lineup." Like there's a ton of talent there, and even with guys like Kling and Jones, they weren't playing towards the end of the year because they weren't playing well.
Yeah.
They were kind of getting kicked in the face by SEC play. Injuries played a part of that. Same with Brady Neal, again, another talented freshman who they just need to round into form and be a veteran leader. They're counting on a lot of guys to be leaders who weren't really even everyday players for them last year. And that's because you have guys like Trey Morgan, you have guys like Dylan Cruz who are holding down those spots to where you don't give guys the chance to be everyday players, but they need guys, and it seems like they're counting on guys to step up who haven't proven it yet. And there's a lot of, I feel like, counting chickens before they hatch in Baton Rouge right now. And I'm never a fan of that.
Yeah, I see a lot of sophomores, right? Got freshmen from last year, sophomores this year that they're going to have to say, you need to be a dude or we're not going to be great. And that's a lot of pressure to put on these guys. I do love transfer Mac Bingham from Arizona. He's a good outfielder. But again, he's not a guy that just blows you away. He's a very good outfielder. He takes care of the bat. He does the things right with the stick. But he's not going to be out there and he's not going to hit 370 and he's not going to hit 20 home runs. He's not going to give you that kind of production. I'm kind of just interested to see if this offense can be anything. I think they have a lot of pitching. But again, a lot of it's unproven. Noah, what do you think about this LSU team?
I think AJ said it really, really well. As we can see the potential in this team, we see the Paxton Klings, the Jared Bear Jones of the world, where these guys are going to be able to step in, and if they can produce to what they are, then LSU is going to be really, really good. But we've also seen them struggle in the SEC, and for that reason, we didn't really see them all that much in Omaha. We saw Kling come in like a defensive replacement kind of a role, but we haven't really seen Kling take big at-bats where the bright lights are shining. But we know he has that potential, and we know that Jay Johnson is able to get that potential out of guys. But I don't know if it's better than what Florida has going for them right now, and even Tennessee. Of course, they're national champions. We're not going to doubt Jay Johnson. They have a lot of talent. Gavin Guidry is somebody that I'm really excited to see kind of take that step, but it's the same story for a lot of those players. Tommy White is really the only commodity that LSU has going right now, and I'm sure LSU is okay with that because in 2 years, we're going to be talking about LSU winning a national championship.
Yeah, I think that this team just loaded up with sophomores, right? And they got a lot of incoming freshmen. They have a lot of talent coming in. I don't know if that experience is going to be enough to be able to get them through this tough SEC schedule, especially coming back after being national champions last year. I have my doubts on this LSU ball club. I do like their pitching. I just don't know where they're going to get enough runs outside of Tommy White. But, I've been wrong before. I just don't see it here with this LSU ball club. But we do have them at number one. There are like 4 or 5 teams, maybe even all the way down to 6 that are really in that talk of who could be the number one team here. But we do have LSU ranked number one. So we're going to move forward here to their conference pitcher of the year. Now, this is always a very, very tough award in the SEC. There's some very good pitchers here. We nailed a few of these last year, fellas. So, no, I'm going to let you start because I feel like I always take your conference pitcher of the year. So I'm going to let you start with who you believe is going to be the conference pitcher of the year.
I'm going to go with a really unconventional pick. Since Jake isn't here, I'm going to have to go with the weird pick. I'm going to go with somebody who's not even projected to be a starter right now. I'm going to go with Will McIntyre up at Arkansas, somebody that this program absolutely loves, that they've been waiting on to click and rise into that right role. He's my pick. There are a lot of great guys that I just snubbed, but I think Will McIntyre is somebody that I've seen in front of my eyes, and I say, this guy is good. If they can get him to plug away in the right spot, Arkansas will be better for it, and so will he.
That's a lot of praise there. I like where your head's at here. AJ, your conference pitcher of the year.
I'm going to go a little bit more traditional. I'm going to ride with Drew Beam. Just Tennessee, he has been there, done that. He's proven that he can throw multiple seasons of, around a 3 ERA, sometimes sub 3. And he does it playing his style of baseball. He's not trying to avoid barrels beyond what he knows his stuff naturally can do. That keeps him in games, that lets him extend his outings, and he still doesn't give up hard contact. And in that ballpark for his ERA, he's been, I think, the most impressive pitcher. And now that he's finally kind of their Friday night guy, that's who I have, taking and running with pitcher of the year. Look for around like a 2.8 ERA in that ballpark.
He's got like a 68% strike ratio, which is just ridiculous, especially in the SEC when you have to throw it over the plate to these guys. That's dangerous enough. I do love that pick. I had two guys in mind, and I was really going back and forth between the two of them, Hagen Smith at Arkansas and Carter Holton. I just feel like if Vanderbilt's going to be great, Carter Holton's going to have to be great, right? And if he's the Friday night guy, he's had flashes of brilliance. He can really be a guy that can shut down any lineup in the SEC. So I'm going to go with Carter Holton out of Vanderbilt. I believe that he could be the dude if Vanderbilt's going to be doing anything. If they're going to win an SEC title, it's going to be on the arms there between him and Futrell. But I'm going to go with Carter Holton here with my conference pitcher of the year. Moving on, coach of the year. SEC coach of the year. There's a lot to like. There's a lot of picks in there. What are we thinking here? AJ, I'm going to let you start here with this, AJ, with this coach of the year.
I mean, all my picks are kind of lining up. I have Tennessee finishing first. I have Drew Beam as my pitcher of the year, and I have Tony Vitello as my coach of the year. I think we're going to see an overall just dominant year by Tennessee. Maybe not to 2022 standards where they were the consensus number one team throughout the entire year, because Wake Forest didn't exist in that capacity that year. But we're going to see a very, very good Tennessee team, and they're going to not walk through SEC play, but it's going to be impressive what they do this year. It's going to be it's going to be dominant, and it hurts me as a South Carolina fan to say Tennessee is going to be dominant, but they are. Tennessee is going to roll this year.
Tony V, it's a good pick. Noah, who are you going with for coach of the year?
I'm going to go with Jim Schlossnagle. I think his team is a little bit overlooked, and I think A&M is going to be really, really good this year. A lot of right pieces coming back. I think A&M is knocking on the door of Omaha right now, and if they get those pieces, they'll be back in Omaha, and Jim Schlossnagle will be at the press conference with an SEC Coach of the Year accolade.
I'm going to go kind of that same route where it's a team that I'm not too certain on. I'm going to go Wes Johnson at Georgia, because if this team can turn around their pitching and be a legitimate top half finisher in the SEC, he's got to have some consideration, right, after all the pieces they just lost and everything he's trying to bring into this team and all the 14, 20-hour days he was putting in during those 14 days in Omaha while he was doing coaching for both teams. I think it's Wes Johnson for me at Georgia. He has the opportunity here to be the coach of the year. Newcomer of the year, you can pick a newcomer or you can pick a freshman. If you want to say one of each, I'm okay with that as well. Noah, I'm going to let you start here with your newcomer of the year.
Braden Montgomery. This is a guy that I think I've picked to win National Player of the Year in the past, so I guess it only makes sense that he becomes the newcomer of the year in the SEC.
That was an absolutely fair pick. You're bringing in a guy that has hit over 300 his whole career. He has 35 home runs in the last 2 seasons, and he might pitch too. This guy has all the traits to be a player of the year in the SEC. I like that, but he could be newcomer of the year as well since he's coming in. AJ, newcomer.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to go Braden Montgomery, so I'm going to steer the freshman route. Cam Johnson is just electric. Everything he does is insane. To throw that velo as a freshman from the left-hand side at LSU, he's going to have every chance to be in the spotlight. If it clicks for him and if he can just be a solid rotation piece for them, he doesn't even have to be their Friday night guy. They got Thatcher Hurd. They got someone who can already been there, done that. He doesn't have to step into that role. if he can throw like a good SEC number 2 as a freshman with that stuff, he could, walk to SEC Freshman of the Year just based off talent alone.
Yep, I like that pick a lot. I like that a lot. I am really jumping into your Tennessee now, AJ, because I think that Cannon Peebles, if he can lock down behind the plate there for them, and if he can be a guy that hits in the 15 home runs and be some offensive production from the catcher position for them, that could push Tennessee over to the number 1 team easily in this conference. So I'm going Cannon Peebles for my transfer from NC State. I believe that him being in there this year is really, really special. And there's a lot to like about what he's bringing into this ball club. If I was going to pick up a freshman of the year, I do believe that it could be Campbell Smithwick from Ole Miss, because he's going to be a catcher too. He's going to get all the opportunities to start as a freshman catcher there. So that's where I would go if I was going with a freshman, Campbell Smithwick. But I am going to go with Cannon Peebles from NC State coming over to Tennessee. Player of the year, Noah. Give us your player of the year, dude.
Well, if you saw my tweet earlier this week, which a lot of South Carolina fans for whatever reason didn't like, I'm going to go with Cade Kurland. I think he's going to take that next step. It's going to be tough to pass Jack Caglione on his own team, but I'm a big believer in what Cade Kurland's going to be able to do with his, as I mentioned earlier, his home run streak that he's on. He's got the pop. He's got a little bit of everything, all the intangibles, whereas Jack Caglione, we've seen him kind of struggle on the mound, and he's got some swing and miss in his bat. Excited to watch Kurland this year.
I like that pick. AJ?
For me, it's hard because I'm torn between 2 names. I'm torn between Charlie Condon and Ethan Petrie, both of whom, can absolutely tear the cover off the baseball. It's for me, it might depend on whose season hangs in the balance more. If one of those guys can push their team into either hosting conversation or into a top 8 seed, that's it might come down to that. But I'm going to hedge my bets and say one of those 2 guys.
That's fair. I think that both those guys could be the player of the year in the conference. I'm going to go a little different here. I'm going to go another Florida player for you. I'm going to go Colby Shelton from Bama. I think him moving into the spotlight here at Florida, he had a terrific season, 25 home runs. This guy could be the missing piece for this Florida ball club to get them all the way to number 1. I think that they have a ton of talent, but I'm going to go Colby Shelton, even though he got a little bit of looks last year. I think that he did not get enough love for what he did at Alabama last year. So I'm going Colby Shelton. All right, fellas. It's that dreaded time where we talk about the dark horse. We don't have Jake to pick a random terrible team for us that should be in a top 4. I think Florida's a good dark horse for this team. So, of course, in our polls, we go 6 through 14. What team do you think has the ability to win this conference? AJ, I'm going to let you start with this one.
Ability to win this conference 6 through 14, I'm going South Carolina. If the pitching staff clicks like the people involved with the program think it could, then the offense is already capable of producing at a top of the SEC level. Thank you for extending that branch to 6 because 7 I wouldn't be able to pick them. But that pitching staff has SEC experience, and they have talent. So it's of those teams. I think their floor is lower than some of these other teams because if the pitching staff doesn't click, then that obviously opens up questions. But if it does click, then, for me, Kentucky's also right there, but their brand of baseball maybe has a high floor, low ceiling in the SEC.
Yeah, I just don't know if Kentucky can win the conference with how they're going to play this year. I think they can be good. I don't think they win the conference, but I like that South Carolina pick a lot. Noah, who is your dark horse?
Texas A&M. I think that AJ took the 6th team. I'm taking the 7th, but I think A&M has the opportunity to really, really pop this year. Braden Montgomery is, of course, a special player, believer in the program down there. New view on pitching, for better or for worse. I hope it's for better. I think A&M has a really good chance of winning the SEC outright and playing in Omaha.
I think that there's a lot of teams here that could play for Omaha, and my number one, though, is still South Carolina. So I'm going with number 6, South Carolina. I think that they have all the pieces to win this conference. I'm lucky that they're at 6 along with AJ there. I believe South Carolina has everything, and Ethan Petrie is the difference maker for me, right? So if this team is great, he can push them into that excellent range where they're one of the best teams in the country. So I really like South Carolina here at 6. Noah, I know you've already talked about it, but A&M, can they get back to Omaha? Is this a realistic chance for them to get back to Omaha?
It's absolutely realistic. You have Braden Montgomery. He only knows how to end years in Omaha. Same deal with Jim Schlossnagle. He's an Omaha native almost. This is an A&M team that I think is really, really deep and almost overlooked because last year, like you mentioned, the starting pitching just wasn't where it needed to be to compete. And then all of a sudden it was. This was a team that made the NCAA tournament, go on a run in Hoover to get to that NCAA tournament, and then they were a win away from playing in a super regional. So I think this is a program that has a lot of things to build on after last season and is putting themselves in the right position to start to really, really build something down in College Station.
I believe that they could get back to Omaha. I think that it's still probably 1 in 4 chances that they have that ability to play that well to get there. But there's a chance that they get back. AJ, another team, South Carolina. We're talking about a lot of new faces on that pitching staff. They're going to have to try to figure some stuff out, a lot different from what we saw last year where they had all those aces in their place. Do we like South Carolina to get back to Omaha?
I do, because you're returning, the guys you do have returning have set roles of, that Matthew Becker and that Eli Jones are going to be 2-year starters.
Yeah.
Austin Williamson and Chris Veach are going to be high leverage bullpen guys. So you're not asking a lot of these guys to step in and be the Friday night guy or be the closer. If they pitch their way into it, then that's fantastic. But you're not asking guys to fill those roles. Those roles are already kind of filled. So you're stepping guys to pitch in, situations where they can get used to pitching in the SEC, get used to pitching at South Carolina, and then grow as the year goes on. You're not asking guys to step in and be, the day one closer. I get you play Miami of Ohio, but it's still a lot of pressure throwing that first game of the year. You're not asking guys to step into roles like that.
I like it. I agree. I think South Carolina's there. My concern, as always, with all these teams is injuries. And last year, the injury bug really caught them at the wrong time of the season last year and really put them in a place where they were fighting uphill to get all the way there. I think that this year they're, building off a lot of their success. The offense, as long as they can stay healthy, it looks like it's got every ability to be the number 1 offense in the SEC. I think that South Carolina has the opportunity to get there. Noah, Arkansas, where are they headed this year? Is this the year that they put it all together, they win a title for DVH, or is this just another letdown season for this Arkansas club where we have them ranked high and they fall off late?
Well, there's an Arkansas fan out there who is his pinned tweet is that Arkansas will be winning the 2024 national championship. So I think he's on board. He's one of the popular guys. I just can't think of his name right now. I think it's like Baum Walker or something like that. It's pretty standard account. But I just can't see it until we see this offense develop a little bit more. Kendall Diggs is, of course, a nice piece. Is he really prepared to step into that star of the offense role? And can those pieces build around him? You mentioned Wilmus Meyer earlier. Is Arkansas going to be able to have those kind of gauntlet lineups that they used to have where they were in that position to win it all? You think of that 2018 team, Mark. I don't know if you remember them at all.
No, not at all.
But that team was loaded. There were no outs in that lineup until Kevin Abel got a hold of them. But that's where Arkansas has to be, in my opinion, to compete for a national championship, just because of how good this conference is, as well as how good even the ACC is. So I think that they're a few ticks away right now, but they absolutely can get there if the right guys develop the way that we've seen Arkansas develop guys.
I think that they could pitch their way through a regional and into a super regional and have that ability to get there. My question, I guess, would be, is the offense enough to win in Omaha? And that's the tough part, because you have to have enough offense with those arms. We saw it a year ago where when the injuries bug hit Wake Forest late in that season, they did not have enough offense to match with that pitching staff. That would be my concern here, because I believe that Arkansas has the best arms in the conference with those top 3 guys, but I don't know if they have enough offense to where we're going there. So, boys, we had a question for our friend Alex, who is sick today. Sorry we miss you, Alex. But I'm going to ask you two both the question. Is LSU actually deserving of the number one ranking nationally in your mind, AJ?
No, I think if you're one of the people who wants to say that, oh, they won the national championship, they're the number one team, then that's ignoring the fact that rosters are different than last year. And if you just look at pure roster comparison to what LSU brings back and what they're bringing in and what Wake Forest has and what Wake Forest is bringing in, I'd take Wake Forest in a 3-game series immediately, no hesitation. I run with that. And it doesn't matter where that game would be played. And I think that tells me that Wake Forest, for me, deserves the number one ranking. And I think we'll possess it for the majority of the year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually don't even have LSU as a top 5 team at the moment, but there's a lot out there. I know it's a bold take there, Noah, but I don't think that LSU is a top 5 team at the moment. Where do you have this team, Noah? And I know, do you have them at 1?
I do not have them at number 1. I didn't even have them at number 1 in the SEC. So I generally agree with AJ that Wake Forest is better. But I was thinking, okay, do I put them behind Florida or not? And you say that they aren't a top 5 team. So I am going to stick them behind Florida nationally in terms of long term right now. So I'm going to go Wake, Florida, and then LSU. I can't tell you who my other 2 teams would be if they were in that mix, Mark. Maybe you can tell us since you don't have them top 5.
That whiplash that you gave Noah was unreal.
Just kind of spun his head around.
I was thinking, am I really going to have the guts to say that LSU isn't top 3? And then Mark says, oh, they're not top 5. Okay.
Listen, I think that there's a lot of question marks on this team. Too many question marks for me to say that they're, granted, they won a national championship last year. That's great. Whole different roster this year. Whole different makeup, whole different everything. They're going to be leaning on a lot of guys that don't have a ton of experience. I don't believe that this team's the number 1 team. Like I said, I don't have them in the top 5. We'll be releasing our own top 25 polls here soon enough, folks. You guys will be able to tear me apart as much as you think. But I don't believe that this LSU team is as good or even close to what they were last year. So, no, we do not have them at number 1. That is overall. I don't know if Alex did, but he doesn't get a vote now. So he's not.
I have a guess that he might have.
And LSU fans, don't hear what we're not saying. We're not saying LSU is not talented. We're saying that returning experience is what is preventing them from being number 1 in our minds currently. If they have guys who come in and step up, the talent's there for them to be the number 1 team in the country. Again, that's not a question. Right now, looking at it preseason, just a fair, unbiased opinion, they're not a better roster with experience than Wake Forest is at the moment. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and we're not attacking LSU. We're not attacking LSU fans. I think that they have a ton of talent. I don't believe that they're the number 1 team. And I love Coach Johnson. I think that he's terrific. But they have a lot to prove. They have a lot to show me. That's all I'm going to say on that one. AJ, love or hate Florida this year. I can't really tell how much I feel for them, but I believe that this is a really good team, and I have them better than LSU this year.
I mean, I love them from a roster and what I think they're going to do standpoint. I hate them from a fact that South Carolina has to play them. And I hate them for a fact that they have ended South Carolina's season the past 2 years. This is a Florida team that's going to end a lot of seasons again this year. They came a game away from winning a national championship last year, so they're angry. The guys who are coming back are going to be just pissed, and it's not going to be fun playing Florida this year. If you're going to get them, I think you got to get them early before they get settled in, because once this team gets rolling, like we saw last year, they can make it all the way to the last game of the year.
If some guys step up, this roster really feels like it could be back in Omaha. I think that this team has all the talent in the world, and I'm excited to see them play. But there are some question marks out there still, but I do love this Florida ball club this year. Noah, Tennessee feels like they lost some guys, right? Are they really up there for a national contender for the championship this year?
Tennessee absolutely is. They bring back so much offensively. They bring back a couple pieces on the mound. Kirby O'Connell's been there 15 years. We don't even really talk about him. He's back as a nice relief piece for Tennessee there. So they absolutely have the pieces. They have that leadership. They still have some of that confidence from 2021 lingering around. We saw it come out at the end of last year. The fur coat was back. They've got that little bit of magic that they lost for a time there. And I think Tony Vitello is just somebody that if you're a player, you can't help but be excited to play for somebody like that. So I think Tennessee will always be in a place where they're going to be able to, even in their worst year, compete at the NCAA tournament under Tony Vitello. And this year they have a lot of great pieces offensively at minimum that will allow them to stay in that conversation. We have them ranked number 3 for a reason.
Yeah, I think this Tennessee ball club is really good, and Tony V, you never can count them out, right? And they're such a wild card team this year because they could win the SEC. They could also finish somewhere in the 6 through 7 range. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if this team had some stumbles, but they do have all the talent. I feel like they are a very complete team, and I do like them moving forward. All right, Noah, how many teams make the SEC? How many teams from the SEC make the tournament? This is a question every year of how many should and how many do make it, but I want you to tell me how many you believe will make the tournament this year.
Well, a few years ago, I tweeted out the stat that as of 2021, it had been a long, long time since 5 teams from the SEC had made the College World Series, and it had been a long, long time since 0 had made it. So the number I always feel safe about is between 1 and 4. So I think I'm going to go with 3 this year. I don't know who those 3 are going to be immediately off the top of my head. My Omaha 8, I tweeted out the other day, only had 2 of them, but that feels like a little bit of a slight to the SEC. I'm not going to go 8 for 8. I know that may surprise some people, but if I had to pick a number, I would go 3. And my gut says that Florida will definitely be one of them. South Carolina's got a really, really strong chance to be another one. LSU, Tennessee will be in that mix. I feel good about 3.
I like that number. I like that number a lot. That's actually the number that I have as well. As I have 3. I believe that 4 is a bit much this year, and I don't believe that the 2 seems like it'd be enough because it just doesn't feel like there's enough there.
And if I could just add the caveat, it's not 3 does not or 4 does not feel like too much because of where the SEC's at. It's because we talk about the ACC. I have a team from the Big Ten that I refuse to take out of my Omaha 8, so that is almost a bid steal from the SEC. So I think it's a testament to how many pieces there are across the country as opposed to some years where it was the SEC show.
I refuse to put a team in from the mediocre 11, as we know. AJ?
How's your conference?
They're really good this year. AJ, where are you at here on how many teams you think make it?
To Omaha, I think we got 4. I think I also tweeted out my Omaha 8 and it had 4 SEC teams. Arkansas, again, I got Kentucky, and then South Carolina and Tennessee. I think not only do I think 4 SEC teams make it, I think 3 from the SEC East make it, and Florida's going to be right there challenging for that spot as well. And it's, for my money, the SEC East is the best division in all of baseball. It's deep. The talent is so loaded. I think to get in the preseason, you have 6 of those 7 teams getting in regionals. It's the SEC East is loaded this year. It's what the SEC West was, I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago, with when Mississippi State and Ole Miss were up there. Arkansas is always up there. It's what that division was a few years ago. That's the SEC East now.
Yeah, I think that 4 is a safe bet too. I mean, 3 and 4 feels right. I can't see 2. I can't see 5. I'd be surprised if either one of those numbers hit. I'd be shocked if 1 or less came, right? Like that would just be a complete mind blow if that happened. I don't have any from the Big Ten though. I'm sorry, Noah. All right, one last question here for you before we get to final thoughts. AJ, do you think that the SEC as a whole is still better than the ACC as a whole this season?
That's tough. And I think the fact that we have to say that that's tough means that the ACC has come a long way in terms of the depth of talent in that conference. If I go a team-by-team comparison, I might still have to give the SEC a slight edge, but it's a conversation, and if we have to reevaluate that halfway through the year or even halfway through non-conference ball, then in my opinion, I take the SEC by a hair, by a nose, but it's going to be a slugfest this year between those two conferences because both have valid claims to being the best conference in college baseball.
I agree. Last year was the first year in a while where the ACC had a better non-conference performance than any other conference. I think it's really, really close. Noah, ACC or SEC this year? I know we have this debate every year after we do the two shows.
It just depends on how you look at it. Do I think that I would bet on the ACC to win a national championship? Of course, Wake Forest might be the favorite, but I would feel better about the SEC winning the national championship just as a blanket bet. With that said, I think the ACC has a deeper lineup of teams that can compete in the NCAA tournament. So it really just depends on how you evaluate those. And I don't think that we can actively talk about the ACC actually passing the SEC until the ACC wins not just one but a few national championships because they just aren't on that level right now. But in terms of depth, I think that there's a really, really strong argument for the ACC. And a lot of SEC fans won't entertain that because they only see the national championships, which might be fair, but it's a tough conversation to have when we talk about, well, let's compare Louisville and Texas A&M this year. It's just not as easy to do.
Yeah. I think that the depth, and I think that there will be more teams that make it from the ACC than the SEC this year, but I also believe that more SEC teams make it to Omaha. And so it puts me in that top behind. It's so is it top heavy SEC is just a little bit better, or is it just that they're more battle tested? I'm still leaning towards the SEC for the simple fact that ACC has to win national championships, and they just haven't done it enough for me to put them on that pedestal yet at the same spot. SEC is still the king of baseball. Literally love what the SEC has done. Final thoughts, Noah, on the SEC preview show.
As always, the SEC is the premier conference, but as we just talked about, the ACC is knocking. I think that there's an opportunity for the ACC to creep up even more if some of these SEC teams don't pan out the way that we could kind of see them developing this year. There was a lot of great freshmen in this conference last year, which could cause some sophomore slumps to really, really change things for the outlook of this whole conference. But I think it's going to be another solid year for the SEC. We talk about 3 teams minimum making it to Omaha. AJ had 4. That's the SEC standard, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it feels like they should have half the teams in Omaha every year. Just kind of feel like that's how it plays out. I love that thought. AJ, final thoughts on the SEC preview show?
The preseason SEC team picked to finish 14th by the media hasn't in the past 8 years. So it's a good sign for Ole Miss. That might be the only good sign they have this year.
It might be the only one they have this year. I like that. Listen, I think that the SEC is going to be a really fun season to watch. There's going to be so many great games. There's going to be so many good headlines. A lot of teams have stuff to prove, though, and a lot of the SEC players left last year in the draft like they always do. But there's a lot to prove. There's a lot of room for some of these freshmen and sophomores to really step up and make this conference a lot of fun. They do have some of the most premier players in the country, and we're excited to watch them. So I'm really excited for the ball this year. Now we got 57 days until opening day, so we're really pumped on this side of it here. As always, folks, thanks for joining us here at the College Baseball Central show called The Weekend Rotation. We have 2 more preview shows coming to you. We have the Pac-12, and then we have the Big Ten. We appreciate you guys watching all our shows. Want to just say happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy the time off. Join us next week as we break down the Pac-12 for the last time probably here. So it'll be interesting and a sad show for me. For Noah Darling, AJ Sessions, I'm Mark Garland. Thanks for joining us again here on the Weekend Rotation. Go follow us. Go follow the YouTube channel. So like and subscribe. And please feel free to send us any questions anytime to any of our 3 Twitter accounts. We appreciate it.